I could pinpoint the exact moment Kyle Warren forgot who I was. His eyes, those same hazel eyes that once looked right through me in high school hallways, now moved appreciatively across my body, lingering just a second too long on the dress I'd spent 3 weeks selecting. A dress I'd specifically chosen because I knew he'd be here tonight. A dress that fit a body he wouldn't recognize. "I don't think we've met," he said, extending his hand with that signature smile that had once made my teenage heart race. "I'm Kyle. Class of 2014. 5 years ago, that smile would have left me stammering. Today, I took his hand and smiled back, savoring the delicious irony of the moment. "Nice to meet you, Kyle," I replied, not bothering to offer my name. He didn't recognize me. None of them did. And that was exactly what I had been counting on. For 4 years of high school, I was Becky the bulky, Big Becky, or my personal favorite, Becky with the back rolls. Creative, right? The kind of nicknames that make teenagers feel clever while they systematically destroy someone else's self-esteem. I wasn't even that overweight, maybe 30 pounds more than the cheerleaders who made it their mission to remind me daily of my physical shortcomings. But in the brutal social hierarchy of Lakewood High, those 30 pounds might as well have been 300. Kyle Warren wasn't the worst of them. He wasn't the one who created the fake Becky the Hut social media account that posted unflattering photos of me at lunch. He wasn't the one who left diet pill advertisements in my locker. But he laughed. He always laughed. And sometimes, that silent endorsement hurts more than direct cruelty. During junior year, something shifted between us. We were partnered for a semester-long English project on The Great Gatsby. Forced to spend time together, Kyle discovered I was actually funny, smart, and not just a body to be mocked. We started talking outside of class. He would text me late at night about music, about his parents' divorce, about his fears of not getting a football scholarship. By spring, I was hopelessly in love with him. I mistook basic human decency for something more. The night before prom, he called me. "Becky," he said, his voice unusually soft. "I was thinking, would you maybe want to go to prom with me tomorrow?" My heart nearly exploded. The most popular boy in school, asking me, to prom. At the last minute, sure, but who cared? This was the stuff of teen movies. "Really?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "You want to go with me?" "Yeah," he replied. "It'll be fun. You're cool to hang out with. So what do you say?" What did I say? I said yes, of course. I spent the night in a fever of excitement, calling my only real friend, May, to scream about the miracle. I raided my closet for something prom-worthy, finally settling on a navy blue dress I'd bought for my cousin's wedding. It wasn't perfect, but it was the best I had on zero notice. The next evening, I waited by my front door, my hair curled, makeup carefully applied following YouTube tutorials. I waited for 2 hours. Kyle never showed up. When I finally worked up the courage to check social media, I saw the prom photos already flooding in. There was Kyle, dashing in his tux, his arm around Heather Mills, his ex-girlfriend, the head cheerleader, the girl he'd broken up with 3 weeks earlier. The Monday after prom, I walked into school to snickers and whispers. Someone had written, "Did you really think he'd take you?" on my locker in erasable marker. Subtle, Kyle avoided my eyes in English class. When I confronted him in the parking lot after school, he shrugged, that perfect face showing no remorse. "Come on, Becky. It was just a joke. You didn't actually think I was serious, did you? Heather and I got back together last week. I figured you'd realize I was kidding." That was the moment something hardened inside me. Something that had been soft and hopeful calcified into something else entirely. 2 weeks later, I graduated with honors. I gave my valedictory speech to a sea of faces that had either ignored or tormented me for years. I spoke about kindness and futures and second chances. I was gracious. I was eloquent. I was lying through my teeth when I said high school had given me memories to cherish forever. Then I left Lakewood behind, swearing I would never look back, except here I was, 5 years later, looking back directly into Kyle Warren's oblivious face at our reunion. The 5 years since graduation had been transformative. and not just physically. I'd gone to Northwestern on a full academic scholarship. My freshman year roommate, Zoe, became the sister I never had, the first person who saw me for me, not as a body type or a target. She introduced me to her brother Marcus, who ran a tech startup in Chicago and needed a content writer. By sophomore year, I was making real money writing for his company. By junior year, I was heading their content department. By the time I graduated, Marcus had promoted me to chief marketing officer, and our little startup had been acquired by one of the tech giants for 8 figures. The weight loss came gradually and wasn't even my primary goal. Zoe was into kickboxing and convinced me to try it. To my surprise, I loved the feeling of power it gave me. The stress relief of pummeling a bag was addictive. 3 times a week became 5. I started running, not to be skinnier, but because I discovered I actually enjoyed the meditative quality of it. The pounds melted away, but more importantly, I found confidence. The kind that doesn't come from a number on a scale but from realizing your own capabilities. My posture changed. My style evolved. I found clothes that made me feel good. I cut my long brown hair into a sharp bob that framed my face. I got contacts instead of the glasses I'd hidden behind. When the email about the 5-year reunion came, my first instinct was to delete it. What did I owe to people who had made those 4 years a special kind of hell? But Zoe had other ideas. You should go, she said over brunch in my downtown Chicago apartment. Show those assholes what they missed out on. That's petty, I replied, though the idea had already planted itself in my mind. Sometimes petty is justified, she shrugged. Besides, wouldn't it feel good to walk in there as the person you are now? Successful, confident, hot as hell? I laughed, but I couldn't deny the appeal. Not for revenge, exactly. But for closure. To put the final period on that chapter of my life. So I RSVP'd. I bought the red dress that made me feel like a weapon. I booked a flight back to Ohio. And now I was here, watching Kyle Warren hit on me without the slightest recognition in his eyes. The reunion was being held at the Lakeside, the fanciest venue in our small town. I'd arrived fashionably late, allowing myself to make an entrance. The room was decorated with our school colors, blue and gold streamers hanging limply from the ceiling. A sad banner read "Welcome back, Lakewood Class of 2014. As I walked through the door, the conversations momentarily halted. People looked. They always look when someone attractive enters a room. That's one of the first things I learned after my transformation. The power of being seen, really seen, not as an object of ridicule but of admiration, was intoxicating and terrifying all at once. I spotted familiar faces. Tina Roberts, who once accidentally spilled chocolate milk all over my white shirt before a presentation. Marcus Diaz, who had created the Becky the Hut account. And, of course, Heather Mills, still gorgeous, her blonde hair now cut into a sophisticated lob, a diamond engagement ring sparkling on her finger. None of them recognized me. I made my way to the bar, ordered a gin and tonic, and surveyed the room. The social hierarchy remained largely intact. The popular crowd had congregated near the dance floor, while the former band kids huddled by the buffet. Some things never change. I'm sorry, but do I know you? I turned to find Jessica Peters, my former debate team partner and one of the few people who had been decent to me, looking at me with a puzzled expression. Unlike the others, there was recognition dawning in her eyes. Becky? Becky Reynolds? Oh my God, it's you. I smiled genuinely for the first time that night. Hey, Jess. Good to see you. She pulled me into a hug, then held me at arm's length, examining me. You look different. 5 years is a long time, I replied. It is, she agreed. You seem happy. I am. We caught up briefly. She was in law school at Georgetown. Still smart as a whip. Still kind. Have you talked to any of the others? She asked, gesturing vaguely to the popular crowd. Not yet, I said. Just got here. Jessica's expression darkened slightly. Just be prepared. They haven't changed much. Especially Heather and Kyle. They're engaged now. Of course they were. The high school golden couple, fulfilling their destiny. Thanks for the warning, I said, squeezing her arm. I'll catch up with you later. With that, I took a deep breath and walked directly into the lion's den. The next hour was surreal. I circulated through the room, introducing myself as if I were a new transfer student they'd never met. People were charming, flirtatious even. The boys who had once mocked my weight now offered to get me drinks. The girls who had once whispered about me now complimented my dress and asked where I got my hair done. I fed them vague half-truths about my life. Yes, I worked in tech. No, I wasn't from Lakewood originally, a lie, but they believed it. Yes, I was invited to the reunion as someone's plus one, another lie, and then came Heather. I don't think we've met, she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes as she assessed me. I'm Heather Mills. Well, soon to be Heather Warren. She flashed her engagement ring again. Congratulations, I replied smoothly. The ring is gorgeous. Thank you, she preened. Kyle always had great taste. I bit back a laugh at the irony of her statement. Speaking of Kyle, she continued, I should warn you that he's taken. I've noticed him watching you all night. The territorial warning was so transparent, so high school, that I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Don't worry, I assured her. I'm not interested in Kyle. The lie tasted sweet on my tongue. Not because I still had feelings for him, those had died years ago, but because I knew what was coming next. Just as I predicted, Kyle materialized at Heather's side moments later, his hand possessively on her waist. Hey babe, he said, kissing her cheek before turning his attention to me. I see you've met my fiancé. Yes, I smiled. She was just telling me about your engagement. Congratulations. Thanks, he replied, giving me that same appreciative once-over he'd done earlier. And you are? Before I could answer, the DJ's voice boomed over the speakers. All right, Lakewood Eagles. Let's take a trip down memory lane with the slideshow you've all been waiting for. Everyone find your seats. Perfect timing, the lights dimmed as we all took our assigned seats. I was at a table with Jessica and some other former debate team members who still hadn't made the connection between who I was now and who I had been then. Kyle and Heather were at the table directly next to ours, along with the rest of the former popular crowd. The slideshow began with freshman year photos. There were collective groans and laughs as awkward, acne-covered faces flashed across the screen. And then, there I was, Becky Reynolds at 14, round-faced, glasses sliding down my nose, wearing an oversized sweater in a misguided attempt to hide my body. Oh my God, remember Becky, someone at Kyle's table said loudly. Whatever happened to her? Probably too embarrassed to show her face, someone else replied, followed by snickers. I sat perfectly still, sipping my drink, as more photos appeared. The slideshow moved through the years, documenting dances, sports events, and candid moments around campus. I appeared less and less as the years progressed. By senior year, I had mastered the art of avoiding cameras, but then came the final segment, where are they now? Our reunion committee had apparently done research on the class's major accomplishments. Kyle Warren, the screen announced, showing his senior portrait. Former Lakewood quarterback now working as a regional sales manager for his father's car dealership. Recently engaged to high school sweetheart Heather Mills. Cheers erupted from their table. Kyle stood briefly, taking an exaggerated bow. A few more classmates were featured, their accomplishments ranging from impressive, Jessica's full scholarship to Georgetown Law, to predictable. At least 3 girls were now involved in multi-level marketing schemes, and then my senior portrait appeared on the screen. Rebecca Reynolds, the caption read. Valedictorian of our class, now Chief Marketing Officer at TechFront, one of Chicago's fastest-growing startups recently acquired for $220 million. Featured in Forbes 30 Under 30 Foot last year. I felt every head in the room swivel toward my table, confusion evident on their faces. Where was Becky? And who was this stranger sitting in her place? The slideshow ended, and the lights came back up. The DJ invited everyone to continue mingling and announced that dinner would be served in 20 minutes. The silence at my table was deafening. Jessica was the first to speak, her voice low. "You've been letting them think you're someone else all night, haven't you?" I met her eyes. They made assumptions. I just didn't correct them. She shook her head, but I could see the hint of a smile. "That's actually kind of brilliant." Before I could respond, Kyle appeared at our table, his expression a mixture of confusion and disbelief. "Becky? Becky Reynolds?" he asked, staring at me as if seeing a ghost. I turned to him slowly, deliberately. "Hello, Kyle. It's been a while." The look on his face was worth every calorie counted, every early morning workout, every late night at the office. Pure shock, followed quickly by embarrassment as he realized he'd been flirting with the girl he had once cruelly stood up. "You look different," he managed, echoing Jessica's earlier words but with none of her warmth. "5 years is a long time," I repeated, my voice level. "It is," he agreed, shifting uncomfortably. "I almost didn't recognize you." "That was obvious," I replied coolly. He had the decency to look embarrassed. "Listen, about high school," I cut him off. "Let me stop you right there, Kyle. If you're about to apologize for being a jerk in high school, save it. I'm not interested in apologies that only come after someone becomes socially acceptable to you." His face reddened. "That's not fair. I was just a kid." "So was I countered. "A kid who thought you were better than you actually were." By now, Heather had noticed our conversation and was making her way over, her face a mask of confusion and suspicion. "What's going on?" she demanded, looking between Kyle and me. Kyle seemed at a loss for words. "Your fiancé was just reminiscing about old times," I explained smoothly. "Weren't you, Kyle?" Heather's eyes narrowed as she finally made the connection. "Wait, you're Becky? Fat Becky?" The slur hung in the air between us, confirming that nothing had really changed after all. "It's Rebecca," I corrected her. "And I see you're still the same delightful person you always were, Heather." She flushed, realizing her mistake too late. "I didn't mean, yes, you did," I interrupted. "But it doesn't matter anymore." "None of this does." I stood up, smoothing down my red dress. "I came here tonight wondering if I would still feel anything, anger, resentment, even lingering attraction. But standing here now, looking at both of you, I realize something important." I paused, making sure I had not just their attention, but that of everyone at the surrounding tables who had stopped to watch our exchange. "I feel nothing," I continued. "No anger. No resentment. Not even pity. You're just people I used to know, living small lives in the same small town, still clinging to who you were at 17. And that's fine. But it's not for me." I turned to Jessica and squeezed her shoulder. "It was good seeing you. Let's get coffee before I head back to Chicago." Then, without another glance at Kyle or Heather, I walked away. I made it halfway across the room before I heard footsteps behind me. "Becky, wait." It was Kyle. I stopped but didn't turn around. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice low. "Not just about tonight. About prom. About everything in high school. You didn't deserve any of that." I finally turned to face him. "No, I didn't. But I'm grateful for it now." Confusion crossed his face. "Grateful? If you had been kind to me, if you had actually taken me to prom, maybe I would have stayed. Maybe I would have thought that being someone's afterthought was all I deserved. Maybe I would have settled for a life here, married to someone who only valued me once I fit into the right dress size." I looked pointedly at his engagement ring, then back at his face. "Instead, you showed me exactly who you were. You gave me the push I needed to find something better. So in a way, I should thank you." I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only he could hear. "But here's the truth, Kyle. Even if I were still that girl you rejected, even if I still had every pound you mocked me for, I would still be too good for you. I always was. I just didn't know it then." With that, I walked out of the lakeside into the cool night air, feeling lighter than I had in years. Not because of the weight I'd lost, but because of the baggage I'd finally set down. As I waited for my Uber, my phone buzzed with a text from Zoe. "How's it going? Showing those losers what they missed?" I smiled and typed my reply, "Mission accomplished. Coming home now." Because that was the real victory. Not the revenge fantasy I'd half imagined on the flight here. Not seeing the shock on their faces or delivering the perfect cutting remark. The victory was in having a real home to return to. A life built on my terms. Success earned through my own merits. And a sense of self-worth that no one could take away again, not with words, not with rejection, not with anything. The Uber pulled up, and I took one last look at the venue where my former classmates were still living in the past. Then I got in the car and told the driver to take me to the airport. I had a plane to catch, a company to run, and a future that had nothing to do with Lakewood or anyone in it. Some people peak in high school. I was just getting started.